Hi, welcome to Ask Tim, the insurance technical podcast brought to you by Liability. I'm your host, Tim Dodge, and I'm coming to you today from a very sunny geek cave here deep within the confines of Liability headquarters. It's a really nice autumn day outside. You know, all this year, 2011, I've been going around the state teaching a class on workers' compensation, the principles of workers' compensation in New York. Just taught it in Batavia a couple of days ago. Still got a few other cities to visit. And one thing I've touched on in that course is something that is a coverage that doesn't get a whole lot of attention, but it has a specific New York wrinkle to it, and I thought it'd be worth talking about today because I just got a question from an IABNY member about it not that long ago. And that coverage is employer's liability coverage. Now, when you buy or when you sell, as an IABNY member, a workers' compensation policy to somebody, they are thinking, most of the attention goes to workers' comp claims, and that's rightfully so, because under the New York workers' compensation law, virtually every employee of a for-profit business is eligible for workers' compensation benefits if they get injured or get sick on the job. But there are certain situations where the employment is not covered by workers' compensation, and that's where the employer's liability coverage comes into play. Now, employer's liability, as the name implies, it's legal liability coverage for an employer's legal liability for injury to an employee, and it comes with several conditions. The injury has to arise out of and in the course of that worker's employment, by the employer. The employment has to be necessary or incidental to the employer's work in the state of New York, because New York will be listed on the deck page under item 3C. Or item 3A, rather. If the injury is bodily injury caused by an accident, that accident has to occur during the policy term. If it's bodily injury by disease, the disease must be caused by or aggravated by conditions of the employment, and the last day of the employee's last exposure to that condition has to occur during the policy term. And lastly, if the injured worker brings a lawsuit, that suit has to be brought in the United States, its territories or possessions, or in Canada. Now, the New York wrinkle to this is it's a tradition that goes back to the origins of the workers' comp system here in New York, and that is that for workers who are subject to the workers' comp law, they can collect benefits under the workers' comp law, employers' liability insurance is unlimited. So you will see limits on the deck page of a workers' comp policy, and I'm going to talk about those in a second. But when it comes to an employment that's covered by the workers' comp law, those limits don't mean anything. For example, let's take, again, as I just said, virtually all workers in for-profit operations are covered by the workers' comp law. If they get hurt, they're eligible for workers' comp benefits. Now let's suppose there's a woman working on the floor of a machine shop, and she's working with a metal punching machine that has a guard on it, and she slides sheets of metal under that thing, holes get punched in it, and then she takes them out. They go to some other place for finishing. Now, she's working with this punching machine, and the machine's got a guard on it to keep her hands from sliding underneath. Now, suppose that machine has been vibrating, and because of all these vibrations, the guard comes loose just as she slides the sheet of metal under there, and so instead of punching the metal, the machine punches out her right finger right below the knuckle. Now, she's been hurt on the job, so she can collect workers' compensation benefits. But suppose she decides to sue the manufacturer who made the machine, saying, you sold a defective machine to my employer, the guard didn't work right, and therefore I lost a finger. Now, the manufacturer might turn around and sue her employer, claiming that they didn't maintain the machine properly. In this situation, because she has an injury that's covered by the workers' compensation law, if that manufacturer sues her employer, the employer has unlimited defense and indemnity under the employer's liability coverage of the workers' comp policy. This is part 2 of the workers' comp policy. So this is a really important factor when you're talking about employees of for-profit businesses in New York. Now, the limits do apply to an injury suffered by a worker who is not covered by the workers' comp law. There are certain employments where if you are injured in those employments, you cannot claim workers' comp benefits in New York. There aren't that many of them, but I'm just going to give you a few examples. clergymen, or clergy people, sorry, or members of religious orders while they're performing their religious duties. Father Frank, Sister Mary Margaret get hurt while they're performing religious duties, performing a service, something like that. They are not eligible for workers' compensation. Teachers at nonprofit, religious, charitable, or educational institutions while they're teaching are not covered by workers' compensation. So think a school teacher at a private school who has a heart attack resulting from the conditions at the school. He would not be eligible to collect workers' compensation benefits. Immediate family members who work on family farms. So you've got a family-owned farm. The spouse and minor children in that family who are working on the farm cannot collect workers' compensation benefits. Lastly, certain real estate agents, media sales representatives, and insurance agents and brokers who sign contracts that state that they're independent contractors. If they've done that, they are not covered by the workers' compensation law. So if any of those folks get hurt, they can't claim workers' compensation benefits. Therefore, they have to seek recovery directly from the employer, and the employer is going to look to their employer's liability coverage. Now, as we just said, with these other workers who are subject to the law, there's no limit on there's no limit of liability. Benefits are unlimited. Not so with these folks who are not covered by the workers' comp law. The standard limits are $100,000 for injury resulting from an accident, $100,000 to one employee for injury by disease, and an aggregate of $500,000 of coverage to all employees who are injured by disease. For more information on the topic of workers' compensation and employer's liability, you want to go to the Technical Guidance and Research section of the IABNE website and click on the link for workers' compensation. If you need to get a hold of me, as always, you can find me by email at tdodge@iabne.org. You can call me at 800-851-8853, extension 229. You can send me a fax at 888-432-0510. What am I forgetting here? Oh yes, you can leave a comment on the blog that accompanies this podcast, and that's at insurancegeek.typepad.com. You can sometimes find me on AOL Instant Messenger as tdog4494. And again, if you can fit a question into 140 characters, send me a question on Twitter to Ask Tim. That's it for this episode of Ask Tim. Thanks for watching. And remember, if you want any advice, expert advice, from somebody who really knows how to injure other employees, don't forget to Ask Tim.